I loved what I saw from Oregon in this game. Mostly.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time for another reaction episode of Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view post-Oregon 31-10 win over Michigan State. And the score, once again, wasn't even that close. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, this show is, as I speak like Yoda accidentally, your team every day and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. Guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So, Oregon's defense reigns supreme. The starters don't allow a touchdown. It was very, very good. We'll talk about Dillon Gabriel later. A quick peek ahead to Ohio State. But can we talk about the undisputed, unquestionable, undeniably biggest story from this game? Oregon hit a 50-yard field goal. I can't believe I'm saying that sentence. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. Andrew Boyle, MVP, Heisman frontrunner. You don't have to ask me any questions because that's how I feel from now till the end of the season. First time since Matt Evans in 2008. I don't even remember that field goal. And I tell you what, a 50-yard field goal. That's something. No, the real story in this game was Oregon's defense. Completely and utterly dominant. Led by Jordan Burch, but he is not the only guy. There's this young, way too confident podcaster out there who once upon a time throughout the summer months said repeatedly that this is the best Oregon defensive line since 2014. Boy, did it look that way tonight at Autzen Stadium, because while I was not there in person, you all saw what I saw on TV, which is, the Oregon defensive line is just way better than the Michigan State offensive line, and they're causing havoc, and they got an Aiden Childs' head, and they didn't pick him off, but Childs struggled throwing the football, 10 of 17, 154 yards, and he fumbled on the 2-yard line. Oregon was one touchdown away from my score prediction being exactly right. Fun fact, my score predictions this year for Duck games, 0-5 against the spread. I've been very close. My predictions have not been that far off for the most part. I had 38-10. It's 31-10. But anybody who watches this game knows the game was not actually that close. Oregon pulled starters, which is great to see guys get experience. Jurion Dickey caught a football in the second half from Dante Moore. Might that be a foreshadow for the 2025 season? I'll let you all be the judge of that. But yeah, maybe. It very well could. But Oregon's defensive line has looked up to the billing that I gave them this season in every game, and somehow they played even better. I can't remember a game that Jordan Burch single-handedly took over as much as he did here tonight. Absolutely phenomenal. Burch on his own, 6 total tackles and 2.5 sacks. I mean, Aiden Childs was probably tired of saying or seeing number one. The announcers were probably tired of saying Jordan Burch. They weren't tired of saying that Bryce Betcher plays baseball, but Jordan Burch was fantastic. And he wasn't the only guy that had a sack. Mateo Uyunglele had half a sack. Derek Harmon had a sack. Like, Jamari Caldwell was disruptive. The defensive line, and the defense as a whole, just looks fantastic. Jordan James had more rushing yards in the first half than Michigan State had total yards. That's an astonishing stat. I don't care which Big Ten team you were playing. That was complete and utter dominance. And Oregon didn't play great in the first half on offense, but they played great on defense. And my 3 keys coming into this game, Oregon, I'll give them 2.5 check marks here. Key number 1 was stop the run. Michigan State, 59 rushing yards on the day. Okay, so you check that box off. Why? Because that forces them to pass. And is that what they want to do? No, it's not. It's not when their passing game is effective. And lo and behold, it worked out as Michigan State totaled under 200 passing yards in this game. They did put in their backup on that final series. But key number 2 I had was be explosive on offense. And I thought this might be more in the passing game. I think Will Stein wanted it to be in the passing game. Instead, it was in the running game. And Jordan James, for a hot minute there, and by a hot minute, I mean most of the first half, was averaging about 10 yards a carry and was bulldozing guys like he's running through a high school JV football team who had no chance to tackle him whatsoever. And he was just cruising, and the offensive line was moving guys around, and James was getting to the edge and running through arm tackles and cycloning through the defense. It was just a phenomenal effort by the Oregon rushing attack. James ends the game. He got stopped in the second half. Credit Michigan State's defense. They made some adjustments. I think Oregon also probably, kind of lost their edge along the offensive line, maybe went a little bit vanilla at times, but Jordan James goes for a career best 166 and a touchdown in this game. Oregon runs for 213 overall. Gabriel ends the game with 257 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks through the air. I'll get to him later on today's show, but there's so many things to like about this game. Like, if you're an Oregon fan and you watch this game, or if you didn't watch this game and you're instead checking out the reaction show here, I very much appreciate you doing that, by the way, you should feel good going into Ohio State, because that defense is every bit as good as we wanted to be coming into the season. They looked that way against UCLA. They looked that way against Michigan State. They looked that way against Oregon State, aside from the first half where, they gave up 2 touchdown drives, and that was it. Like, this has been a really strong showing from Tosh Lupoi's unit, and Dan Lanning deserves credit, and Chris Hampton, all the assistant coaches as well. Tony Tuioti, defensive line coach, maybe the most unheralded assistant for Oregon right now, because his unit, defensive line, dogs. They're just dogs out there. They are playing exceptionally well, deep, talented, multiple. Jared Mack had a hilarious tweet, friend of the show, and over at 24/7 Sports, and he tweeted out that Amarion Winston noted 3-tech, and then I don't even remember what he said after that because I just started laughing. But Amarion Winston had a good game. Jordan Birch had a good game. Mateo Uyunglele had a good game. Like, those guys are all making an impact, and it's a beautiful thing to see. I think it's clear at this point through the first 5 games, Oregon leans on their defense this year more than they did a season ago. And part of the reason that's the case is that Dillon Gabriel couldn't figure out that Oregon was the team in yellow jerseys, not the team in white jerseys. So let's talk about the Oregon quarterback coming up next. First, let's get to FanDuel. Why? Because you can start the season big with a big return on FanDuel if you're an NFL fan or a college football fan, America's #1 sportsbook. Michigan State kicked a field goal with less than a minute to go in this game and covered 23.5. Vegas is so good, and so is FanDuel. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Of every score prediction that I've had this year that has led me to be 0-5 against the spread, not that I am wagering such things, I've never seen that. Last year, my score predictions were really good. I think in the regular season a year ago, my score predictions were something like 9-3 against the spread, 9-3, 8-4, which is a really, really good mark. Well, not a good start so far this year. If you can do better, or if you just want to fade whatever I would hypothetically tell you, yeah, maybe that's what you should do. Go check them out at FanDuel.com. Nothing like a post-victory second segment sip for the Ducks. So, Dillon Gabriel. Gotta knock off the turnover thing, man. Here's what's concerning, and this is the biggest concern for Oregon's offense, because you know what it was for me coming into the game? They haven't created chunk run plays. Oh, nope, they showed that they can do that. Jordan James runs through tackles. They can run left, right, inside, outside, counter, zone. I mean, they did all sorts of creative things. I think Will Stein started having a little bit of fun in the second half. Like, oh, yeah, we got this game won. I'm going to snap it to Jordan James. He's going to fake an end around at Dillon Gabriel, and he's just going to run through the left side. That was kind of fun. So, I thought Will Stein had a good game, by the way. Dillon Gabriel, on the other hand, did not. He figured it out. He threw a nice touchdown to Evan Stewart. He threw a short one to Tez Johnson. He made some plays, but I I thought that interception he threw against UCLA last week in the red zone was, well, got that out of the way in a game that didn't matter. Nope, he not done. He was not done throwing the ball to the other team inside the 5-yard line. At least he didn't go for a touchdown and make the game slightly uncomfortable. This game was never uncomfortable. Even when Michigan State drove down the field and Oregon forced a fumble and they go down the field, score a touchdown or whatnot, I was never worried because what was my number one key coming into this game? Oregon, stop the run. And it became clear very often, Michigan State's not running the football today. That's just not going to happen. Oregon's defensive line is way too good, way too disruptive, and way too deep. And that proved to be the case. Now, the reason that it took a while for the score to reflect how the game actually was being played on the field, Oregon total yardage in this game, 477 to 250. That's not close. They had 363 in the first half. That's not close. Not even remotely close. But Dillon Gabriel made 2 boneheaded decisions. These were not fluky plays. These were not bad play calls. I understand some fans are going to say, well, why don't you just run the ball again on 3rd and goal? Will Stein did that in the second half, and Oregon got stuffed, and they had to go to the air to punch it in on 4th and goal for the last touchdown of the game. So, they run it the first 2 times. Now, I wanted to run it a 3rd time because I'm like, show me you can stop Jordan James on 3 straight plays in the short yardage. If you can, okay, then you put the ball up in the air. But the play call wasn't the problem. The problem is Michigan State defended it well, and then Dillon Gabriel, who's been playing college football for a long time. He was playing college football while I was still in college. That's a true thing that has happened. And yet he made a freshman mistake again, twice. He's done it 3 times in the last 2 games. I don't know whether to brush it off or to be majorly concerned. Because after the UCLA game, I did brush it off. Because he's a veteran quarterback. He made a mistake. Nobody's perfect. Okay. Even if Tez Johnson doesn't slip, it's a bad read. He shouldn't have thrown the football. Throw it out of the back of the end zone, take 3 points. Should have done the same thing again this week, though. You roll out. There are only 3 guys on the route. There's the fullback, there's T. Ferg, and there's Patrick Herbert. A classic goal line play action concept. You have a corner, you have a crosser across, obviously. In the middle is what I was trying to get at. You have a crosser in the middle of the concept, and you have the fullback underneath. Michigan State expects pass. They defend it, throw the ball away, kick field goal, take 3 points. You better do that against Ohio State next week, or Oregon fans are going to lose their minds, and I'm going to lose my mind. My dad called me during the game when Oregon had a 14-0 lead, and Gabriel had just thrown his second interception caught inside the 2-yard line against Michigan State. It's not like this is the Buckeyes. You're going to face a better secondary next week. You got to figure that stuff out. My dad was lamenting, we should be up 28-0 in this game. And I said, no, should be up 24-0 in this game because Will Stein shouldn't have stopped running the football when they were dominating, or Gabriel should have been able to make a play that, was an interception. But on the 3rd and goal, the first interception, throw it out of the back of the end zone. I don't care. Get points. I know field goals aren't always sexy and attractive. Have we not learned our lesson from last year? That field goals can, in fact, win you a football game. Because it turns out you need to score points in order to win. And that's not happening if you throw it to the other team. So this is just a legitimate concern. That he did it last week, I can brush that off. But after this game, I'm going, that's a problem. That's a problem. He's a 6th-year guy. He's going to, barring an injury, and he got lit up, but wind knocked out of him and came back into the game. I didn't have a problem with no roughing the passer flag there, by the way. Roast me all you want in the YouTube comments. I could have seen the flag being thrown. I was not up in arms when I saw the replay at the flag not being thrown. It was kind of late. It wasn't egregiously late. If the roles were reversed, I wouldn't want that flag thrown on Oregon, but I see how it could be thrown. Just a quick side note there. But for it to happen against UCLA, for a veteran quarterback like this, and then he comes out and does it not once, but twice in the same half, this game, Oregon should have, Dillon Gabriel took at least 10 points off the board. bare minimum 6, which would have been my score prediction really, really close. But at most 14. Maybe Oregon goes for it and gets it. Maybe Oregon, and I hope on the first one, especially early in the game, Dan Lanning would have taken points. Maybe he wouldn't have because he knows that, he's got a much better team than Michigan State, and he doesn't have to push the envelope the way that he might have felt he needed to against Washington a year ago. But I don't know what else to say. They're just bad reads. They're not inherently bad play calls or dumb designs or getting too cute. It's just Dillon Gabriel making a dumb decision. He did it last week, and then he did it twice here. Like the first one, like I said, throw it out of the back of the end zone. Your first read is probably in the flat. Your second is on the corner route. Your third is on the crosser. 1, 2, 3. They're not there. Don't force the issue. Okay, defense made a play, lived to fight another down. He threw the ball away a couple times in this game, and guess what? Oregon went on to score on some of those drives. Because it turns out you have to have the football to be able to go down the field and score. I know I'm breaking news to Oregon football fans out there, but incredibly frustrating. And then on the second one, again, nothing wrong with a play call. Go under center. Will Stein had some neat play calls in the red zone. The 4th and goal to Tez Johnson. The 2nd and goal to Jordan James for his lone touchdown of the day. Cool designs. Well executed. Calls the rollout. Completely fine. Got no issues with the call. That ball either has to be thrown sooner or Dillon Gabriel needs to realize that he is not Josh Allen. You cannot zip that ball into that tight of a window. And I don't know how he's looking at that and going, yeah, I could fit that in there. Or, I need to fit that in there. Clearly the kicking game has some merit to it. Sappington hit a couple of 40-plus yarders last week. I still cannot believe that Andrew Boyle made a 50-yard field goal. I cannot believe. That ball didn't really waver. It kind of started to the right. It drew back. It went right center. It had plenty of leg. I can't believe Oregon made a 50-yard field goal. I really can't. That is the most shocking thing, the most impressive thing that I saw in this football game. But in the negative sense, the most shocking thing I saw was one of the most experienced quarterbacks in the history of college football going out there making freshman mistakes. That's a frustrating thing. And that's a concerning thing. Because if you can make those mistakes against UCLA, who stinks, and Michigan State, who's better but isn't very good, kind of feels like Dillon Gabriel's due for at least one turnover against Ohio State. So if you're concerned by it, I think you should be. Because once, you can write that off. And I did. But when you do it twice in a row, and then you do it another time in that half, that's to the point where now Oregon fans are going to watch Dillon Gabriel throw the ball in the red zone next week against Ohio State, and their first thought is going to be, please don't be an interception. That's what I was thinking on the not on the Tez Johnson touchdown, the Evan Stewart touchdown. My thought was, please don't be please. You have that moment where your heart stops and you're like, okay. So that needs to get cleaned up. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I know Dillon Gabriel knows that, but he should have known that after last week. That's what is concerning. It's not that it happened against UCLA. It's that it happened twice in a half and prevented Oregon from making the score look uglier than it was. But again, does that matter? No. I think anyone that watched this football game or knows anything about what took place at Autzen Stadium on Friday night knows Oregon was completely and utterly dominant. And 31-10 looks like a big number. And guess what? It wasn't even that close. Just like UCLA last week. I think Oregon overall is playing good football going into Ohio State. Which I'm going to talk about more next because just a couple things. Just a brief little look ahead to the Buckeyes. That's going to come in full next week on the show. There'll be plenty of Oregon Ohio State content, but the thought was on my mind. It was on the announcers' minds, plural. So that's coming up next. First, let's get to Game Time, which has a new feature. It's called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Whatever you want. You get a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy. They have their lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. All of these perks and more is why you should check out Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It is game time. All right, so this game against Michigan State, another dominant win where the scoreboard doesn't even show how much Oregon was really the better team for the second straight week. Oregon State did. UCLA and Michigan State definitely did not. How should we be feeling going into Ohio State? On the whole, I feel good. I'm not sitting here telling you, oh, I feel great. Oh, I think Oregon's going to run. It's a really good team. It's a really good defense. Dillon Gabriel is going to have to protect the football. That's probably my number one concern right now. Number two concern is how does the Oregon offensive line hold up for 4 quarters against the Ohio State front? It is by far the best front four they will have faced the entire season. But right now, when you compare, credit to Dan Lanning and his entire staff, because how was everyone feeling after the Idaho game to begin the season? How are you feeling right now? I feel right now how I expected to following the offseason that Oregon had and the number of returners they had and the newcomers that they had. Didn't feel that way after the Idaho game or the Boise State game, but you can't dodge around the fact, even if you might try to subconsciously, the last 3 games, Oregon has played exceptionally good football, and they have been really good, and they still have not played their best. Oregon State was pretty close to it, but you'd have to say the first half on offense, or on defense rather, with the Oregon State offense converting all the time and chewing up the clock and limiting possessions, that wasn't their best. The best the Oregon State, that the Oregon defense has, I don't know why I can't talk right now. The best the Oregon defense has is what they did in this first half against Michigan State. I had zero, after Michigan State fumbled on the 2-yard line, and if Childs had held onto the ball, I'm not sure. I mean, Jonathan Smith, Brian Lindgren have a lot of clever play calls in there. I'm not sure if Michigan State would have scored a touchdown. Maybe they would have. It would have been the only one. And I felt really good about that from the jump. Defense was ready from the beginning. I know they gave up the 4th down. Jabbar Muhammad gets beat over the top. Childs makes a good throw, tries to punch the ball out. Guy makes a good catch. Sometimes you tip your cap and say, hey, it was a great play call. It was a great play call for Michigan State. They executed it really well. Okay. I can live with that. And then afterwards, the defense just locked in and said, yeah, you're not scoring again. And they didn't. They did not. And they didn't even score on that drive because Oregon's got a bunch of playmakers all over the place. So I feel incredibly good about Oregon's defense. I feel good about Oregon's offense. And yeah, Dillon Gabriel right now, only in the red zone, is a limiting factor. His deep ball looks pretty darn good. I mean, that close. First play of the game, taking a shot, I don't mind it whatsoever. I'm here for it, frankly. I'm here for stretching the ball down the field. Make the defense sag off. You don't think that opened up the running game for Oregon a little? I think it did. Because Michigan State coming into this game had been really good against the run. They'd struggled a little bit against the pass. And if Oregon's showing you, hey, we will go over the top if you are not ready, or if you are, going cover 0, we're going to do anything. Or if you're going cover 1, we'll push down the field. Michigan State says, oh, okay, you're willing to do that? And then all of a sudden the running game opened up. And then the entire offense opens up as a result. So, by the way, Jordan James at half was getting discussion on Twitter about could he break Kenyon Barner's record, and then the Michigan State defense made adjustments. Goes to show you how ridiculous 324 yards and 5 touchdowns, I think those were the numbers, for Barner against USC in 2012. How ridiculous that was. Because James couldn't be stopped, and then the Michigan State defense, to their credit, made some adjustments. And I think the Oregon offensive line lost a little bit of its edge. Play calling got a little vanilla, and that's all okay. Because Oregon's 5-0. It's right where I thought they'd be before the season. The Idaho-Boise State games didn't go as planned, but the 3 games since then kind of wiped away those bad memories a little. And I feel good about Oregon going into Ohio State. Gabriel's got to clean up the turnovers. Offensive line has to bring it in the run game because you see what this offense is supposed to be. It's supposed to have that balance. It's supposed to have the play action shot and the play action boot ability. I think Gabriel's really, really good in those particular spots. But I feel good. Let me know how all of you feel right now going into Ohio State. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of comments dragging Dillon Gabriel. He deserves some of it after this game, because if he turns the ball over against Michigan State, where Oregon is just the better team, they're going to win that game 100 times out of 100 if you play it on that football field. You can get away with throwing interceptions that deprive your team of at least 6 points and as many as 14 points. So why don't we split the baby and call it 10 points? Dillon Gabriel, on average, costs Oregon 10 points. You can't do that against Ohio State. You can get away with it against Sparty. You can't do that against the Buckeyes. Their defense is too good. So the execution has to be cleaned up, but that's the only thing I'm looking at. Because defense, those dudes can play. Those dudes can play. Love seeing all the young guys get in the game. Even the young guys along the defensive line, just mauling people. Mauling people, running around them, getting after the quarterback. That was a fun game to watch. On the whole, fun game. There's just the one thing. There's just the one thing that has to improve. Let me know your thoughts. I'm sure you will anyway. Appreciate everyone listening. I appreciate you very, very much. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, go Ducks.